The never-ending challenge of startups and scale-ups is getting more customers. Who are they? Where are they? How do you get them interested? How do we close a sale? And on the other hand, the customers or the end users are grappling with their own challenges. Do we need new technology to change? Should we buy or build? Will we need to significantly change the way we do our workflows each day? Or will we need to have a huge training effort to implement the new technology? Hi, my name is Simon Hayes, and I'm the Secretary of the Proptech Association. And it's great to have you here for today's panel discussion on the secrets to buying and selling PropTech in the commercial property space. Before introducing our panelists, I'd especially like to thank our main sponsors, Stone and Chalk, who have made this event possible, and our foundation partners, Macquarie Bank, Ashurst Lawyers, the Real Estate Institute of Western Australia, PEXA, and Webbit. Now, most importantly, to introduce our panelists. To share their experiences and provide great insights from a PropTech perspective, we have got two New Zealand companies making headway in Australia and overseas. The first of these PropTechs is Forbre, and we have Scott Wilson, who is the CEO, on the panel today. Hi, Scott.
Good afternoon. How's it going?
Good. And then the second PropTech is Released, and we have Sharif Hassan, who is the head of APAC. Hi, Sharif.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And providing their valuable perspectives from a customer or end user point of view, we have two very well known and respected Australian companies. The first of these companies is Preston Rowe Patterson. We have Greg Preston, who is the chairman and managing director on the panel today. Hi, Greg.
Simon, thanks for having us.
Thank you. And the second company that needs no introduction is Investor. And we have Katrina Newcomb, who is the national head of asset services. Hi, Katrina. Hi. And so welcome everyone, and thank you. And I should say, look, if anyone, when we're talking, if anyone wants to jump in and certainly have things to add, please do so. Please jump in at any time and interrupt me. That's absolutely fine. So look, I really thought we'd just start with a PropTech, and I thought we'd start with Scott. So Scott, let's start with you, and let's find out some of Forbre's secrets, shall we? Perhaps if you can provide, say, an elevator pitch for Forbre, and then a quick overview of the company's marketing and sales approach, target customers, and growth over the years.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So Forbre is a commercial real estate appraisal valuation software solution built for and validated by institutional investors in commercial real estate. So that's meant investors and valuers, and that's taken us over the last 2 decades to get to this point. So our software is used for capital transactions analysis, for external valuation instructions, and sometimes asset management. We serve international markets. We began here in Australia, and we also have customers in Singapore, Japan, the UK, and elsewhere as well. So our target customers are really the owners of commercial real estate, particularly those engaged in the buying and selling of commercial real estate. So if you imagine a big due diligence exercise, maybe a group that's looking to cover a whole heap of the market with a small group of people, our software is used by those groups. It's also used by valuers where we're seeing a very sophisticated set of requirements and a lot of need for an edge case analysis solution as well that can handle a lot of complexity. Our approach to sales and marketing is a reasonably new discipline for Forbre. We've been a product-minded, engineering-led business since inception. So until recently, I would have characterized our sales and marketing approach as quite reactive, but that's changing, and it has to, because we're approaching newer markets and no one in these new markets knows who we are, and how could they? So right now, this is a big focus of this business, and in particular, how we can scale the business as a result of that investment. So a bit of a sense on our growth story, we are growing around about 60% year on year, our user base. And to give you a sense on the size of the business, we're processing around about 500,000 valuations per year from around about 12,000 properties. We're operating in 5 time zones, 3 languages, and we are spread over hybrid office locations in 7 different countries.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic. And so when did you, okay, so a good question to be is you've transitioned into, say, the new sort of approach to marketing and sales because you've had to. And sort of what were the triggers around that, just in terms, you just go explore that for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So a big trigger has been we have invested heavily, I guess, in a product-centric business for a long time, and we have spent a lot of time refining and scaling out that solution. So it's meant a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of eyeballs, a lot of late nights in the business spent on building out those edge case requirements, making the product faster, making the product simpler to use, handling more use cases. The flip and really, I guess, the augmentation of a sales and marketing culture in the business is a response to the investment we've made to really start to, I guess, get to a point where we feel confident putting the foot down.
And certainly with that growth that you are having, say in Australia and overseas, do you feeling like what sort of do you think you'd put down to the key factors for success? You know that you've seen so far in your growth.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that there's a lot of lessons, and I think if I look back on the time that I've spent in this business, there's a lot of mistakes that I've made as well. I think what's really important to understand, I guess, in terms of how I've played a role in that is I've been the one doing founder sales, and a big transition point for any prop tech or any startup, especially a SaaS business, is getting to a point where other people in the business can sell the product or service rather than just the founder. It's very important in the early days for the founder to be able to sell the product, because if the founder can't do it, who else can? Equally, you're getting a lot of product feedback and intel in those early days as well. So look, I think one of the key lessons that it's taken me a long time to get to is having that very intimate understanding of the problem that you're solving and how your product solves it. So it's the old adage, people don't want a 1/4 inch drill, they want a 1/4 inch hole. It took me a long time to learn this lesson. I was so eager to, jump into demonstrations and present features, whereas now it's very much a benefits focused pitch that we give. So during that founder stage of Forbre, I was pitching Forbre. I didn't understand it, and I was so thrilled in the solution. I was eager to show and demonstrate the product. When I pitch Forbre now, and it's usually for a slightly different purpose and audience, I usually don't even get to the product. I'll talk to stories about where we've come from as a business. I'll talk to the customers, the customer segments that we help, the pain points we solve for them, and as quickly as possible get a conversation going, because until you actually understand who you're talking to and what problems they have, it can be very difficult to present any option in front of them, because it really comes down to what, if there's a match, and if there is a match, what you might present next.
Okay, and so she said that's a great insight, thank you, because it's really once it's coming back to that real end, or the customer point of view, and finding out what their problems are, as you said, with a 1/4 inch hole. It's actually finding out their problem rather than actually pitching a solution which they may not have a problem to. So that's what it sounds like, what you've learned over the years. Well, I might move on.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, look, I think I'd just like to emphasize one other point there as well, is what's really important in that stage as well, getting really, really good at discovery. And not confusing this with a pitch as well. So if you get an inbound inquiry, or if you're introduced to someone who might have a need for a product like yours, another mistake that's commonly made is mixing up the pitch with discovery. So if you imagine a scenario where someone has reached out, they want to learn more about your product, and you're interested in helping solve that pain point they have, and you just know, or you're just convinced that your product is right for them, you don't need to ask any questions. You get straight to it. Here's my killer app, and here's how it's going to solve all your problems. So what we don't do that. What we do is we get obsessive about discovery. So, who is this company that we're talking to? What makes them unique? What's special about that company? Who got in touch? Why did they get in touch? Have they used Forbre before? And if so, when? And if they didn't, how did they hear about us? Why now? Why is the timing important for them? And also, have they considered X, Y, and Z about how they might think about a solution, or bringing on a solution like Forbre? So trying to get really good at recognizing what's discovery and putting a big difference between that discovery point and the pitch itself is a really important one, and it's a difficult skill for startups to learn. It certainly took us time to get to that point.
Good boy. Okay, that's very good, great insight. Look, before going on to Sharif, to divulge some of Really's sales secrets, I want to explore the buying approach with Greg. Now, the reason why is that PRP has recently implemented Forbre into its workflow, and so I was interested in sort of exploring that and the reasons, the decisions around it. So, but before getting into that, so could perhaps Greg, you could tell us, a little bit about, um, you know, PRP, but also, your use of technology and the implementation of Forbre.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. We're a startup 30 years ago, so in a modern sense, it's probably a little bit some time ago that we actually got our business going, but we've now got 32 offices around Australia, across all asset class sectors too. We operate in terms of valuation advisory business, from agribusiness through to commercial, retail, industrial, hotels, a lot of infrastructure work around airports, shipping ports and whatnot. So it's a very broad base to what we do. And because of that, we do need to be au fait with or using the latest technology that's available to us. And Forbre, by way of example, we've been doing our own discounted cash flow type valuations for ever since we kicked our business off and before we at other businesses, and developing it ourselves and trying to augment and make what we had better, but investing a lot of money doing it. And when there's a product like Forbre that's specifically, it sort of got to a point where we were tipping money down a black hole internally and just couldn't keep up type of thing, where it's not our core business, which is advising on real estate, not actually building software to a point. We also have other applications that we use quite regularly, and we've got code writers in our business where we're developing our primary platform for doing valuations across all sectors, all asset classes, PRP online software. It's a paperless office, tablet-based property inspection system. And we recently, as COVID hit last year, we partnered with Velocity, another New Zealand company, heavily into valuation, aggregation, etc., and developed an inspection app where we could inspect properties with COVID by property and photograph and describe features and things like that. So the onset of COVID sort of rapidly advanced a few things, which has been fabulous. I think there's a fair bit more coming in the Proptech area with things like that. But we also use other software tools, but it's just we need to be moving with the times all the time and adapting and evolving. Yeah.
And so just in terms of the process, say, and I appreciate certainly is great insight into sort of your use of technology. And certainly you've got the internal and the external process going in terms of looking and using and adapting as quickly as possible to the changing market. What would be, in terms of, say, you can use Forbre as an example, what was the internal process and decision making that you would have approached, the use of in purchasing a Forbre, or say other technologies that you are looking at? Sort of just generally explain that one.
Yeah, look, Forbre is a good example. I mean, we were doing our own version of it, but it wasn't keeping up with the advances that having continually upgrading, and it brings a lot of advantages to a business like ours in terms of revaluing assets, where the data, the tenancy and cash flow data built into the system, which is very sophisticated in terms of dealing with some of the things we have to deal with day by day, like tenant incentives, which are very complicated in terms of cash coming in. Forbre is so we got to a point where we were developing our own, but the features that Forbre had. Then a lot of our clients, like the institutional property owners, all the REITs and so on, both listed and unlisted, all use the product. It's very easy to share information and the data upon which we rely to do what we do using the Forbre platform. So it became a no-brainer to us to stop the pathway we've been going down, Simon, because we'd invested getting on to $500,000 trying to develop our own thing over 4, 5, 6 years, and it just gets silly when it's not our core business. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So I might move on just quickly to Sharif, because I wanted to discuss Released. And hi, Sharif. Perhaps look if you can provide a quick elevator pitch for Released, and then just a quick overview around the company's marketing and sales approach, target customers, and growth of sales over the years.
Sure, yeah. So Release is it's a cloud-based application dedicated to improving the operations of commercial property managers, whether it be a commercial agency or a landlord or institution managing their portfolio in-house. So we do this by centering around three key outcomes, business outcomes. So first of all, it's dropping what we describe as the cost per management, or by streamlining the admin process for both property management and accounting functions by providing a central integrated system where accessible for all stakeholders. So from the accounts team, the property management team, to the management team, but also externally with the tenants and the landlords. So all stakeholders involved with the management of that lease have the access to information as and when they need it. And we've also invested a lot of development and R&D into the actual user experience side, which we actually think is one of the biggest factors in our success. Secondly, aside from the efficiency gains, we are invested in mitigating the actual risks of missed key lease events, access control to key users, centralizing that information, which is typically spread across spreadsheets or in people's heads, and then they leave the business and information gets lost and things get missed. And finally, it's actually measuring and tracking and analyzing that information about the property leases and team performance in a real-time dashboard with live metrics. So what we really want to do is allow decision makers to have the information at a rate they've never had it before. So really live and flexible information that can be displayed in a number of ways to really allow for that data-led decision making and based on the performance, and also we benchmark it across our release database, because we've reached a critical mass of information about leases and a lot of the geographies that we operate in. We're able to provide that third-party neutral perspective on what's happening across the market with regards to leases and lease terms, lease lengths, these types of metrics. So with that, a bit about the company. We started very similar to Forbre, started in New Zealand, probably a little bit later, back in 2013, quickly expanded across to Australia and the UK, and also across to the US now as well. So I think we have roughly about 5 or 6 hybrid offices, as Scott described them. We are, I think the latest figures, we are processing about $7 billion of rent per year. Or across some 200,000 leases. So that's where really we're stepping more into that data space where we have that access to a lot of that information, and us, coming into our own internal operations, because we've got those two key market segments, being property management companies, but then landlords and institutional landlords, but those who manage it in-house. We're able to offer that data back in a value add way. Our marketing and sales function has really developed as well over the time that we've been operating the market. And I think it's actually almost typical in New Zealand businesses that we focus a lot on getting the products right from very early on, and almost want to get it perfect before we scale up the marketing and sales operations. Whereas if you look at the kind of the American way to go, as soon as they've got an MVP, they've rolled out 50 salespeople and they're ready to go to market. I think it's a nice middle ground to that, and we've really kind of developed in that and made a lot of mistakes along the way and learning. Not only who our customers are, but who our salespeople are, who works in these types of positions, and understanding, what's that best fit to go to that market. So, I mean, with how technology's gone now, we know that 60% of the actual buying process is done before they even get to us or even speak to us. So, it's about, first of all, having that really strong marketing engine that's packaging us everything that any type of touch point they have with us in the marketplace tells a story and is leading them down the path which we want to offer. But it's also about give before you can get. So whether it's providing that value in terms of data, providing that value in terms of insights, and really demanding that time once you've earned that credibility. And we do that from both directions. So starting off, we were very much inbound driven. We relied a lot on in terms of our growth. I think we had very, very similar growth figures to Forbre. And that was really based on our integrations with other softwares and just our word of mouth in the market. But we realized in the last couple of years that for us to really achieve the goals and enter in the markets and really tackle some other competitors which might have been there for a long time, and we're starting to become a little bit outdated. We've had to become very good from an outbound perspective, and really being able to get in front of the people that we want to talk to as and when they want to be spoken to, and so there's been a lot of trial and error in that respect, but we really kind of put it down to that give side, and being able to offer that value first before asking for a coffee or a chat, or really wanting to book a meeting from there.
And how I understand just from discussions with yourself and others that you certainly started with targeting smaller clients or smaller owners, smaller agencies, and you've moved then and obviously now targeting the larger corporates or the larger owners. Is that sort of, and what things have you learned about transitioning, say, from from the smaller segment of the market to the larger segment? Is there sort of something, insights there that you can offer?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think typically, as you'd expect, when you are dealing with larger customers, there's perhaps several layers of the decision process being made. They might typically be a little bit more, they might have someone dedicated to that procurement side and purchasing technology, so they might be a little bit more educated in that space, in that process. That aside, I think regardless of who you're selling to, whether they're small or big, the buyer, when you engage with the buyer, they don't want to waste their time just as much as a salesperson doesn't want to waste their time. And typically for our customer base, it's not one of, if not the only technology decision they'd be making in that year. So we really want to take the lead on that process with our best practice, but then have that very in-depth discovery. I think discovery, and Scott nailed it, is the number one piece for us in terms of spending time the best way, but also delivering the best outcome. So we've got a very, very in-depth discovery conversation to understand what's driving the discussion, the decision, what factors are affecting their decision, what factors haven't they considered based on our knowledge, and really understand that pain, the root pain, but also the peripheral effects of that pain. As well. So it's really what we want to do, because not only is it so important to get that right, but actually understanding, are we the best fit to solve this problem, and figuring that out early on. And that's where the partner relationships we have, for example, Forbre and with PwC, can allow us to focus on the buyer outcome, and then spend more time helping on those which we're well positioned to help.
Yeah, sure. I might say hi to Katrina and certainly move on. She's been waiting patiently. So thank you very much for that, Katrina. Hi. And look, and I know that with your wealth of experience, you are no stranger to property management systems. That's for sure. You certainly with your background. Look, but instead of discussing, say, your experiences in that area, I'd really like to start with just more of a general question and your understanding of, say, how are large property companies like Investor thinking about and approaching technology? Yeah, and so I'm asking this in the context of that I understand Investor has developed its own technology. And has also purchased technology externally from Proptechs. So if you just let us in on sort of that sort of understanding at the moment in a general sense, and then we can sort of dive into some more issues.
Yeah, sure. We do a bit of both, and we always have. So the history of Investor as one of Australia's largest commercial property owners is that sometimes there are not products in the market that suit what we need and what we want to do. So over the history of the last decade, we've dabbled in sort of developing our own software, but not fully internalized. We've always had a partner.
Right.
So a lot of you would have seen things on LinkedIn and other social media platforms recently about some things that we've been doing with Spark Beyond. And that's not us going out on our own. That was us saying, oh, we think we've got a bit of a pain point here. And we've thrown a whole lot of resources at that pain point. And Spark Beyond have thrown their amazing data washing machine, I call it. And we've come up with a product that has helped us to identify some sites which will assist our capital transactions team. So a bit of a journey. A couple of lucky people got to go to Israel and have conversations with Spark Beyond. We've done similar things with Willow. So Willow have put digital twins in a few of our assets. And through that journey, we've expanded what that digital twin looks like. We've then developed with them an app that our tenants use. So it's our tenant engagement app, and Greg, being a tenant in one of our buildings, has probably seen Insight. So very much back end is all Willow and their technology, because we're not IT people, we're property people. But all of the way it looks at the front end, what we need in it, how it's going to work, that functionality is all our intel. So we really go into partnerships with people rather than saying we can do it ourselves. And then if I look at an example, given Scott's on the phone, of where we've gone with a smaller company, a couple of years ago, we were using one of the big beefy softwares to run our capital transaction models to work out what we wanted to pay for a site. And it was clunky, it was hard, people were making mistakes, it was really difficult to change parameters. And one of the agents we were using at the time was using Forbre, and said, Forbre is way easier, it's simple, it gives you what you want, you can just get in there and tweak and play. And we were introduced to Scott and his team. We then said, well, we'll do this on a trial basis. It's not going to cost us a whole lot of money to get our initial pack of 5 licenses. And I think, Scott, we might be at 15 or maybe even 20 now. We sort of keep growing. And we played around with it. And as we played around with it, we said, oh, actually, it's not just useful for the CapTrans team. This is useful for my asset managers to do leasing deal scenarios, because it's easy. Once they know how to use it, they can get in and change things really quickly. And Forbre, as Scott said, they engage with their customers. So the whole way along, it was, what else could we do for you? What else would make this make sense to embed this in your business more? And those conversations meant that Forbre actually put a lot of our suggestions in their development pipeline, and we were then able to use it more fully across the business. So I very much look at IT and the solutions, and anybody coming to us, it's got to be a partnership, because it's rare for a company like Investor to say, yes, this product completely off the shelf is going to work for me, because it just doesn't. We've got lots of different ways that we want things done, and whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. So we need to work with partners who are adaptable and can change and tweak things.
Do it. Oh, that's good. Thank you. And okay. And definitely one of the questions would be is then, okay, I'm a Proptech. I have a solution which I think would be potentially great, and I'm happy to work with Investor. What would be the best way to approach someone like Investor, with my solution? Is it a knock on the door, or
emails? Because I'm not going to respond. We get lots of Proptech companies. I mean, Proptech's a buzzword at the moment. Lots of companies are out with all sorts of different products, and there would be not a day go by that I don't receive an email from somebody saying, have I got a product for you? Well, they actually don't know what I want, so they can't tell me they've got the product for me. Having those intros, finding somebody that knows somebody at Investor, or that knows somebody who works with Investor, or whatever it might be. Our relationship with Forbre very much came from agents we were working with. It was Savills who said, this is great, use it. We went and had a play with it. We saw what they were doing, and we said, yeah, we think we like this. It's generally our relationships come through introductions. Occasionally it will be that opportune conversation that happens at a conference, and people get talking and they go, oh, maybe you can actually give us a solution here. But generally it's knowing somebody, not just spamming with emails, because you will not get a great hit rate doing that.
And it certainly sounds like it's certainly someone who's actually using the product as well, who can then, then obviously can pass on the information and the experiences that they've had as well.
Yeah, definitely helps.
Yeah. And what about in yourself, Greg? Would you have any insight into saying, okay, well, look, someone's got another, like a great valuation solution, whatever that may be. What would be the best way you think would be approaching PRP?
Always have an ear to the ground, I think, Simon, for things that are emerging. But direct approach, I think, through knowing somebody that's got something that's tailored to what we do. I mean, we're always looking at what our competitors are doing in terms of Proptech and IT as well, because it really drives efficiencies into our business, and because it's very process driven in some parts of it. So, but a lot of that comes from the people that are aggregating valuation services for the banks. Our PRP system there's got a lot of bolt-ons to it that B2B's into most of the banks sort of things. So instructions for valuation work just come straight through the pipeline to us. But in terms of the new things, we're always on the lookout for things that will streamline our processes. So, I mean, usually the direct contact's the best way, but you know, if emails are bobbing up to do with new Proptech things, we'll always have a look at them just to see whether we can fit it in, or you know, it does marry up with what we're trying to do, or give us other ideas about how we might deal with things better. So it's flexible, I think, is probably the answer. But you're very keen to hear about new things and how we might be able to embrace them.
Sure, sure. And if I flip back to Scott, then just what about the, you know, in terms of you've gone down the discovery channel with people, and you know, you obviously identify people have either, you know, like companies have either approached you, you're going down the discovery channel, and then obviously the next point is moving on to, say, the sales pitch and moving people along that funnel, that sales funnel that everyone calls it. Yeah, what do you think are the key factors of getting to yes? Yeah, by a company.
Sure.
From a company.
Yeah. I think Sharif said it before. If you've got someone in your sales pipeline, 60% of the work's done. And certainly the way that Released and Forbre have evolved through word of mouth, primarily to begin with, anyway. A lot of that that vetting and that validation is kind of self-selecting, as we were talking about earlier. So, I mean, if you getting to yes, I mean, a kind of understanding who your target buyer is, what that ideal customer profile looks like as well is important. You know, if you're in that sale process and you're talking to the junior who maybe doesn't have the authority, or if you're in a reasonably corporate procurement process that we were talking about before as well. You know, if you have to complete an RFP, or if security is a focus for the company, you might have to fill out a security questionnaire, or maybe legal have to review your terms. All of these things can take a long time. So it's not so much getting a yes, it's how quickly sometimes you can get to a yes. But I think that if you are in a sales process and if you're in dialogue with a group like PRP or an investor, there is generally a commitment to change, and maybe the decision about what change to make has still been made. So I think the primary factor is to distill into your sales process exactly why doing nothing and sitting on this is not going, or going back to the market is not going to help. And be prepared to be honest, you know, be ready to talk candidly about the competing alternatives to your software. Be ready to pour time into meeting compliance activity. Know your terms of use inside out. So if you're getting grilled by an in-house lawyer, you know which points to renege on, which ones to say no, we're not going to change that. But most of all, I think we were talking about before, if you can get your buyers talking, if you've got customers out there that are really happy with your product or service, they're going to be big advocates for you. If you can get dialogue going between your ideal customer groups, then you've got several happy customers that can help really promote that. That's crucial. It takes time because change takes time, but I think removing those barriers and looking at creative ways to help your customers complete their due diligence process is really important.
Okay, very good. And what about Sheriff? Just if you could add some insight to that, but in particular, because I know that Released have other competitors out there, you know, that are offering similar products, and no doubt you would come, you know, if a company was going out and looking for a product such as a property management system, you would be, you know, potentially up against those other systems. How are you getting to yes, or what are you sort of what do you think the process is there that's sort of, you know, winning you the opportunities that are coming to you?
Someone was going to do it this call. I think first of all, the process in terms of the software as a service, there's a big stress on the service element of that, and being able to compete by being there as and when you need them. For example, we have our internal policy that if someone contacts us, we're on the phone with them within 5 minutes, and that's the kind of starting impression that we want to set right from the get-go. But it's really understanding that sales process and making sure. I mean, internally for us, it's very common for salespeople to have happy ears. You know, you hear what you want to hear from the prospect and come to the conclusions on that basis. But really having a rigorous process of where people are in the sales cycle and asking the right questions to understand that, because the worst thing is if the salesperson's misaligned and they're pushing for a close when the buyer's not ready or still doing their research and understanding that. So one of the key things that we want to do initially in the cycle is agreeing on a mutual timeline. That's something that key milestones that are leading up to a decision that are agreed from both yourself and from the buyer. Well, there's one trick that I like to use, because a lot of the time after the follow-up, you come off a meeting and things can go into the abyss. And it's not big that they're not interested, but typically the buyers, this is not their one priority. Your one priority is selling software. Their priorities is one of 100 things that they're doing. So staying top of mind can be a challenge, but agreeing timeframes, agreeing follow-up times, really scheduling that, but making it their own. So I typically, after the initial meeting, I send them an email rather than saying, hey, this is the timeline that we agreed on, and the email gets read or sent to read directly from the start. I actually say, hey, I think we were wrong about this particular part of the timeline, and get them to actually engage with it and say, oh no, this should be this or this should be that. But really, like Scott said, getting to the yes is a matter of answering all the questions. If you are the right fit, then it's about working through the timeline and all the way back to the discovery. It's actually not just talking through the pain points, but really being able to quantify those pain points. And that can be a little tricky at first, but just asking, keep diving into those questions so that when you know exactly what problem you're solving, but how much that problem is actually solving them. So great. I mean, so by delaying this decision by 3 months, you're actually costing yourself $40,000 in terms of missed opportunity time. So really getting to that detail in the discovery is going to serve you well in terms of managing that process.
Right. Okay, thank you. And what about, and I know with Released, you've been also developing many APIs, with other applications that can plug in. Has this, do you feel that's helped sales, in terms of, the opportunities that are coming to you?
100%. I mean, it's all about the connected cloud. At the end, the fact that we are able to operate in this environment means that we can integrate with other solutions that truly offer the best package for that, and then and the buyer will be able to pick and choose the solutions that work best for them. But we can focus on being the best commercial property management software rather than trying to be a generalist and focus on a lot of different tools. So being able to be connected gives you the best shot of competing with perhaps outdated server-based solutions, but also really having that package and being focused on that from that buyer perspective.
Okay, that's good. And what about you, Katrina? In terms of, would you think that that's an advantage, or how would say approaching the purchasing decision around a company offering other APIs, or is that a bit of a something that you're not really after?
Definitely something we're after.
Okay.
We've got lots of different systems that we use across our business, so the more they talk to each other, the less manual handling there is of data in between the systems, the less errors you have. So the more we can talk to each other and integrate systems, then it is much easier for us to get what we need out of that product.
Yeah,
so I would say it's actually one of our number one priorities. If we've got standalone software that can't talk to anything else, we kind of yeah, that's great, but it won't cut it for us.
And what about yourself, Greg? Is that because it sounds like with the amount of data that goes back and forward, in your day, no doubt, between systems, it must be highly useful.
It's critical, Simon, that we only record it once. So it's got to feed into everything we're doing, because in what we do, risk management's significant, and the human error factor, if you're trying to record data multiple times, which is the old way, it's just not, it doesn't cut it these days. So we want to, whatever we capture goes into, say, Forbre, for example, and then we will then replicate that into our reporting. And look, one of the other things that with Forbre that we gravitated to was the fact that our livery, our branding, colours can all be built into it, so it just slides straight into our own personalised reporting. Yeah, the key for us is linking systems so we don't have to multiply record data because it's fraught with danger. Yeah.
And I might sort of quickly jump in. Actually, no. One before I jump to ask Scott another question. I've always wanted to ask a valuer this. Do you think Greg? Do you ever think we'll have a push button valuation? Is it going to be that automated, or is there always going to be the need for a valuer?
There are a few things that sort of prevent it, I think, Simon, to be fair.
Sure.
One is, look, it's it's moving that way, but in terms of some of the regulatory controls around doing valuations through APRA or the Prudential Regulatory Authority, they require certain valuations to be inspected by the bank type thing. So, and then on top of that, the condition of assets. So it's all very well for data to be the key and the catch-all, but you've still got to have somebody inspecting the assets and applying the value ranges to it. Now, wind the clock forward 20 or 30 years, that may be different, but it's not something that's on our doorstep
just yet. Yes, so there'll still be. Yeah, so it shouldn't deter anyone from going into valuation. That's for sure. It'll still definitely be a need for it.
It's very busy at the moment.
Sorry, Scott, come back to yourself. Just with I understand that you're going overseas, and it's probably, and also we'll sort of ask Sharif for a comment, but you've gone from New Zealand to Australia and then now to overseas. You no doubt got companies that are operating overseas as well. Is there some sales challenges or some sales advantages sales insights that you found to, selling sort of the product overseas as a difference to New Zealand or Australia? Sort of any insights on that?
Yeah, I think it's unique in every geography, that sales process, but there are some common threads. And I think what might help is a bit of a story about another mistake I've made in this area. I spent 3 months in Singapore a few years ago in a Forbre role, and I got 2 pitch opportunities in that 3 months. And this was because at the time I believed that I had a solution that could work. I had a product that I thought there was a need for, but it didn't matter what I had. The buying process in that market did not respond to discovery demos in the same way that I'd expected. Rather, change in those organizations that I would have pitched to is made gradually and often with trusted partners. So instead of that, I should have been using my time to, I guess, grow and try and foster relationships with potential resellers instead of trying to work through discovery and pitching the product. We're now actively targeting the UK. It's completely different again, and we're not as naive to think that we have a one-size-fits-all approach. But I think in each case, there are some common themes. When you go into a new market, no one, or at least very few people, are likely to have heard of you. You have no employment brand, so finding salespeople is hard. You cannot assume anything about what the product market fit might be like until you have talked to dozens, more likely 30 to 40 individuals that are actually prepared to sit down, listen, and provide you honest feedback. And actually, more important than getting new customers in new markets is getting an honest account and description of where, how, why your product could be relevant for that market. So yeah, having learned by getting this wrong, I think there are some common themes there, but it is a big undertaking, and
Sure.
you should be prepared to transform everything you've done.
So certainly certainly by the sounds of it, when you're going overseas, you need to take time. There's going to be time involved, and don't expecting immediate results.
That's been my experience.
Yeah, and Sharif, head of APAC, you must have a few good insights into this.
Yeah, I'm actually probably in Scott's Singapore position right now, except doing it from New Zealand. And yeah, I think I've definitely learned very quickly that the reseller route is the way to go there. I mean, thankfully, we've been able to partner up with institutions in New Zealand, which and learn from some of the previous proptechs or just technology companies that have gone into that space. But absolutely, the nuances that could affect whether or not the product could work in a particular region, especially in a region that might have other languages or big cultural differences, are very, very unique and require a lot of research and understanding before you go into it. Very similarly, when we went into the UK and now the US, our approach was put a few people on the ground there first, spend a lot of time talking to customers and figuring out the product to market fit before going crazy with growth and setting big ambitious targets there. So it's been a very similar experience to Forbre.
Okay. Katrina, one last question before we probably have to finish up soon, but just in terms of the investor being obviously a large company and a decision-making process, what are some of the steps likely that a proptech would need to jump through with you? The red tape steps that are common that we need to go through. I
won't lie, there are a few red tape steps. Dealing with larger organisations, we've got multiple layers of approval, and depending on the size of investment or product, it might need to go to our board. And if it could go to the board, they don't even meet every month. Sometimes, depending on what's happening in the world, they might only meet quarterly. So things wait, things take time. Scott, I think, made a comment before about it. You can get tied up in legals. That is true. We have particular requirements that we require in our service provision documents, and if they're not there, it just keeps getting batted back. So it can be frustrating for small companies that doesn't have as deep pockets as ours for legal bills. I get that. I would say patience and flexibility is the key there, and expecting that it will take time, expecting that it will take multiple meetings, there'll be multiple conversations, and you may have to deal with several different stakeholders before you actually nail the deal and get to documentation phase. So time and patience is my tip for everybody.
For everyone for the sales. And what about yourself, Greg? Anything that you'd like to add?
We're probably a little bit more nimble, being a private business and not as large, because we can act pretty quickly if we find something that it suits what we're doing, Simon. But I was just going to say, Simon, too, I have got to get back into a board meeting that I dived out of to do this, so I hope you don't mind if I run.
Not at all. I was going to. It is time, so I was actually going to wrap it up there anyway. So
I'm sorry about that.
I was just grabbing your last comment, and then I was going to say, look, I think that's it. Unless anyone else had anything to say, but that was going to be it. And I'm sure we could discuss this all day. Does anyone want to add anything other than that? No? Okay, great.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Katrina, Sharif, Greg, and Scott.
Thanks for allowing us to participate. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, just before I go, I'd also like to thank the PropTech Association Committee and especially Kylie Davis, our president, for their help with this event. Look, we'll be holding more webinars to do with PropTechs and the commercial property over the next few months, so please stay tuned or follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. And a very big thank you to Stone and Chalk for getting behind this event and their support of the PropTech industry. So thank you everyone for your time and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.